Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer video. Today we're going to jump into some speculation regarding the Grand Empire of Cathay, more specifically one of the possible legendary lords. Now, as of yet, no legendary lords have been confirmed for Cathay. However, given established lore and characters already established, it is more than possible to guess. Today's video will be focused around the Monkey King, a rather interesting character in the very little lore that we actually have of Cathay. Before we begin, the artwork shown on screen is of course not official, as there was very little artwork ever created for Cathay or any characters, units and so on. So not much is actually known about the Monkey King. What we do know is that in 2377 of the Imperial calendar, he managed to seize power in Cathay, often being referred to as one of the Dragon Emperors. It's not very clear as to how he actually came into power, but given that the lore states that he seized power, it's very likely that this was done via an aggressive route. Not much is known about his rule, other than the fact that he also had some seemingly normal diplomatic relations with the Skaven of Clan Eshin. And by the point of our timeline, which is focused around 8th edition, the Monkey King is no longer in power in Cathay, as by this point in the timeline, the reign of Karl Franz, which started in 2502 of the Imperial calendar, there is another Dragon Emperor in power. This is close to a 130-year gap, yet there is evidence to suggest that the Monkey King may still be alive and active. We don't know exactly when he lost his rule of Cathay, but we do know that during a certain time there was a character which was introduced in lore, and whom we've also discussed in videos, who served him for a time. I'm of course referring to Dian Qing, a Cathayan Chaos cultist who served under the Monkey King for a time, but after an unspecified point of time, he was expelled from the Empire. Of course, after being expelled, Dian Qing had to move and find work elsewhere, bearing a grudge against the Monkey King himself. But he eventually found himself into the lands of the Western Empire. During his travels, he was present at the Second Siege of Prague, which the timeline itself can be quite iffy about depending on the source. However, the book the character is mentioned in does specifically mention a certain point in the timeline where he had conspired with some unsavory individuals to have Crown Prince Luitpold murdered. The young prince is of course Karl Franz's son, which means timeline-wise both of them would still be very active. Obviously, timeline doesn't mean too much in Total War Warhammer. We have to take into account that other characters long dead, such as Réponse de Lyonesse, had been brought back into this timeline. But the reason why I wanted to point that out is that it's obviously still canon in some way, shape or form. From this, we can more or less assume that the Monkey King is not dead, and he was somewhat expelled from Cathay after a possibly tyrannical rule. However, that was never really established. So if the Monkey King is indeed alive at this point, where would he actually be? Well, there is an area in Cathay known as the Mountains of Heaven, and up high in those mountains live strange monkey warriors. The eastern parts of the Warhammer fantasy world seem to produce a large variety of different types of beastmen than we're normally used to seeing. And something of note here is that these beastmen tend to be very hyper-intelligent. They're not like the typical goats that we see around the Drakworld. These beastmen are much more intelligent, much more disciplined, and have a certain martial prowess about them which rivals that of incredibly trained warriors. It's very likely that these monkey warriors are servants of the Monkey King. And yes, there were a lot of parallels with Chinese mythology, even I can see that, but then again that's how Games Workshop operated back in the day. Originality itself just wasn't a thing back then. But getting back into the subject, there is a strong basis for the Monkey King to be introduced as one of the legendary lord choices for Cathay. The points are as follows. It's known that he took over Cathay and then lost control over it. A race of intelligent beastmen known as monkey warriors seem to be related to him in some way, and there's a base of operations, the Mountains of Heaven. This gives the character enough reason to be considered to be a possible legendary lord, some possible plot revolving around the retaking of Grand Cathay, the Monkey Warriors being a possible exclusive unit just for him, maybe 1 or 2 different variants, it very much depends. And the base of operations already points him out to a possible start position. The Monkey King himself is also one of the most well-known characters in Cathayan lore. There's not really that much in all honesty, but if that's the case, they would probably want to go with a character that people already are aware of. And from a personal point of view, it's very likely we'll see one implementation of the Dragon Emperor in Cathay as a legendary lord, so introducing the Monkey King as a possible antagonist would be rather interesting, as this would lead to not only having to worry about the threat of chaos, but a contender to the title of Emperor itself. This would lead to far more interesting campaigns and more of a reason to play both legendary lords, as you'd want to try out both sides of the coin, so to speak. Of course, both Creative Assembly and Games Workshop can decide to omit the presence of the Monkey King until much later as a DLC character, and instead implement a freshly new created character. However, that sounds rather boring in all honesty. As we've already discussed, Cathay itself has very little lore, so implementing characters that are already fairly well known probably works in their benefit. Plus, the obvious parallels with real Chinese mythology could be a possible selling point for certain players. Despite the fact that this character is relatively unknown, it's one that I'm very much hoping makes an appearance in Total War Warhammer. But what do you guys think about this character, and do you agree that he could be a possible legendary lord choice? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and let's start a bit of a discussion. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince, and Okro for subscribing to us at our Fane level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman, and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our King level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing, and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel has been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.